Now we're joined in studio by the Minister of Justice and Constitutional Development, Minister Mmamoloko Kubayi, as well as constitutional law expert, Advocate Lufuno Nevondwe. I want to start the conversation with you, Advocate, but this is a nice-to-have process. That's the best way I could put it, because there's no legal requirement for a consultative process to take place before the appointment of the NDPP. The President merely applied his discretion and said, I'd like the advice and assistance of a panel suitably put together to help me make this decision. Given that there's no statutory requirement for the existence of this panel, how does one even begin to challenge the legality of the process?
Yeah, I think this process is covered in terms of Section 179 of the Constitution. The section is very clear that the President of South Africa holds the power to appoint the National Director of Public Prosecution. And this power is exercised through a rigorous, transparent process which involves also a panel which is responsible for shortlisting, vetting the candidates, interviewing them, and also make recommendations on the suitable candidates. So the process is very clear, and I've observed this process, followed the process, and from my side, it appears that the process which were followed were constitutional, and the recommendations have been made. Now it is up to the President in terms of looking at the recommended candidates to check who will be the suitable candidate for the position. And all the candidates were suitable. It's now up to the President looking at their CV, and also looking at the requirements for the job.
Can I just pause you there, because I want to
be the right candidate to become the next.
I just want to pause you because I want to circle Advocate Lufuno back to perhaps the crux of the matter here. The President may well still choose to appoint someone who wasn't interviewed or who was not shortlisted. He's still within his rights to do so. Given that the President still has the ability to do so, are there any grounds to challenge the validity of the shortlist based on the suitability of any of the candidates?
Yes. Remember, whoever is not satisfied with the process, he has the right to challenge the process. But looking at how the process have unfolded, when I look at that process, there's nothing much which I can say. If you challenge, you are able to put a strong case if you challenge the process, because all the processes were followed. The process was transparent, open to the members of the public. We saw all what has happened. We saw the candidates, their CV, their profile were published, and we were able to interrogate those CV, and we have seen that all the candidates were suitably qualified for the position. They have experience in prosecution and also in the legal fraternity.
Yeah, Lufuno, we're going to have to leave it there. Thank you so much for joining us. Really do appreciate your insights into this matter. I want to bring in the Minister into the conversation. Minister, we've invited the attorneys at Bixolo and Partners to help understand the case a little bit better, but they argue that the panel which you led acted unlawfully, irregularly, and that they're asking the court to review and set aside the outcome of the work of the panel. What's your response to that?
Look, the matter is sub judice and I don't want to deal with it in detail, but that's absolutely absurd to have a legal firm make such conclusion. It's just unfortunate to even think, how did they come to that? They made a submission, like everybody else, to say we have comments. Our objections are on the following. The panel processed the comments, and the panel incorporated their comments as part of the process, and the President will make his decision following the report submitted to him on the 12th of December.
Was the President furnished with the objections and comments made by all interested parties who submitted such?
The report has been submitted to the President. I will not go into the detail. The panel looked at everything. You'd remember even during the interviews, the panel will process the comments from the public, will be summarized. We would have interrogated them ourselves. There are comments, many of them that have come through, positive and all those things, where we felt that the candidate needed to clarify certain matters we would go into, and then we'll follow up on that. And the process was transparent. So the recordings are available on YouTube as well, in terms of what has happened. That's why I'm saying I'm not so sure what was the basis. Even for an agent interdict, what are you interdicting?
I mean, yeah, the urgency there is questionable. But Xulu argues very specifically that the panel didn't do the things you say it did. That's to say, the panel didn't present to Hamoen Cronje the objections that he specifically raised.
We did. And she said that she had not received it. And we put it on record that, go look at this, they're going to give you give us a written submission. It's on record. I don't know what he's looking for.
Yeah. And you're satisfied with the written submission?
Yes.
Okay.
We've looked at the response. We've processed it as part of our process in deliberations, and we have included as part of our deliberation as the panel. That was part of the process. Yeah. I don't know what he's looking for at court.
Yeah. The DA makes an entirely different argument. The argument they make is that the process was contaminated before it even began, because a process that chose to interview Menzi Simelane is a process that's irrational from inception, because Menzi Simelane should not have made it past the screening phase. What's your response to that?
We responded to that. Remember, that was the letter that came before the panel even started. And at the beginning of the process, I read out the letter. We responded to their lawyers, because at that time, they were threatening to interdict the process. They never did, because we responded. And as you would have seen, we said that there was not even a shortlisting. These are people who met minimum requirements. That's it.
Yeah. I want to ask a question slightly parenthetical to the legal challenges, and that is the talent pool challenges. Are you concerned at all by the lack of interest that this post has? Because one would have assumed that, like the public protector, for instance, attracts endless applications. But this one seems to be a poison chalice that many talented prosecutors in South Africa are saying, not a chance.
Look, having been a minister for over years, it differs. You would attract CVs, but not the right CVs for the post. So you can have 200 submissions, but if 200 submissions of the applications that you have, it's people who do not even, for example, you'd have somebody who just graduated, who do not have an experience, they would apply. I don't know if you've heard, previously the president was talking about a councillor in Matadila requesting for him to be deployed to be an ambassador in the US, for example. So it's those things that would end up getting. Is it a poison chalice? I did have several people, and towards the end of the last year, I did even an interview, and I explained publicly that part of the issue was that you'd have people submitting CVs. After maybe 2 days, they will withdraw. We opened the process for submission. The process was closed. We extended and requested legal firms, legal bodies to circulate and request people to be nominated, people to apply. Still, out of what we got, even following that, was people with no experience. NPA is quite a huge organization. It's a critical organization. And therefore, the number of years of executive leadership, because you're going to lead senior executives. You've got DPPs who are leading with executives in provinces. You've got NDPPs who are deputies to the national director. You've got footprint across the country. This is an organization of more than 6,000 employees existing. These people are based in all the courts. We've got more than 750 courts across the country. Now, if you are to have a head who's responsible for all these people across with a critical responsibility like that one. So you've got to look at various issues. And that's why we said we're not looking for a prosecutor. We're looking for a person who has experience in prosecution. We're looking for experience in leadership and all those issues. That's what we were looking for.
I ask if you're worried about a number of people who picked up their hand and say, look, I meet the minimum requirements and I'd like to put my CV forward, because in an ordinary sense of things, we shouldn't have to bicker around whether someone like Menzi Simelane, who the Constitutional Court was quite damning about, is one of the top candidates in the country to be considered. We're a country with many talented prosecutors and many talented academics who have executive experience, who could put up their hands, but many are afraid of the NPA.
Look, I don't want to be reflecting on individual candidates. Remember, the president still has to consider our report and also what we are commenting on. So I don't want to be publicly speaking about that in every candidate. What I can say safely is that there are various issues, both raised by the current NDPP in terms of the environment, the issues that needs to be addressed, that we have committed that we need to do. One of the issues that is coming through is the salary. The wage package of the NDPP, in how it's structured, in how it's an issue. That's one. The security of tenure, both in terms of the NDPP and the deputies and everybody in the organization, how it's structured, it's an issue that we needed to. So there are reforms that are needed in NPA going forward that needs our attention and that we've got to be able to, and that's number one priority for me in 2026. Not only responding to the operational and financial independence of NPA, but also how it's structured, how the security of tenure, how it's working. For example, one of the issues that I said to the team in the department to look at legally for me was that if you look at SABS, when you have provincial commissioner, they are able to move them across.
Yes.
One provincial commissioner can leave from Free State to go to Northwest, whereas within NPA, you have one DPP who is heading a province, and that person can head for 20 years. It's a risk in a security environment. Those are some of the things that we want to engage with the legislation, with the policies to be able to change and secure the justice system.
That is, of course, different for the NDPP in that it's a 7-year term limit, right?
No, it's a 10-year.
A 10-year term limit.
It's a 10-year. So the Act says that the NDPP is appointed for 10 years or at the time as he reaches or she reaches 65, age of 65. So that's the issue. And again, others have said to me, but do you think that a majority, if you look at the courts, the retirement of a judge is 70 years? Shouldn't you expand it to that level? So
and that's also quite optional in the instance, of course, because many judges sit on the bench well past 70.
Yes, past 70 as well. But also they're saying, you are likely to find the cream of what you are looking for at that age.
In the seniority.
In the seniority of the people. So those are the things that as feedback I got, we're looking at that. What is it that we can be able to do for an institution that looks like NPA and in what it has to do in the country and its responsibility?
Shamila Batoye's term comes to an end at the end of this month. Do you think she did well over her tenure? And I ask that in light of some of the revelations we got from the Andrew Chauke inquiry, where quite clearly Shamila Batoye had some real oversights that should be concerning.
Again, that process still has to come back to my hands, and I don't want to be making observation on it until the process has come to an end. In terms of remember the commission and the inquiry would have recommended through the president, and the report will come to me for me to submit to the president and make advice to the president. So it's advisable for me not to be commenting while the process is still running. At the end of the process, we'll make a public comment
but she do well.
And say, look, in terms of the work that as we're looking towards her end of her tenure this month, is that when I look back in what the NPA has been with where she has and my interaction with her, there's one thing, that there are positive and negatives. One positive thing I can say publicly and openly is that I've never had an allegation of her being corrupt since I've arrived here, nor having unwanted engagements or that compromises the integrity of the NPA. There's not been interference that has been brought, because sometimes people say political interference, but you've got to have a person at the helm of NPA who is not going to be willing to be used, taken to certain meetings that they are not supposed to, and as a minister then you are caught up having to deal with this person having said in some corners. That I can say I've never had that since I've been here. Number two is that I think one of the weaknesses is that arriving in NPA from where I'm sitting, and I've given this feedback to her, is that I don't think she appreciated the nature and the problems that existed. So it needed a turnaround where you've got to accept, one, that you had an organization that has been divided into two in terms of that institution. Some individuals within would have been found to have done wrong from top to the bottom. Therefore, you needed to be able to rebuild an institution of integrity, an institution that is focused on delivery and meeting targets. For example, one of the issues that I've raised when I arrived is that I don't understand why NPA has not voluntarily or upfront said all prosecutors must do lifestyle audit. Because if a prosecutor is refusing to do a lifestyle audit, that's a red flag. If a prosecutor does not feel comfortable, a prosecutor that lives beyond their means, it's a problem. Because they are risking the system. So if you have done a lifestyle audit for everybody, then you'd have the comfort, even where there are allegations, to say, but I've done lifestyle audit across them. I can bear testimony. And I said to them, as a minister, I said, until they do all of them lifestyle audit, I'm not going to take public platform and vouch for their integrity. Because I need something valid, valuable, for me to be able to vouch. So that, for me, it's a criticism that I believe that she could have made sure that she puts mechanisms in place that are able to. But I think she has laid a foundation for the next NDPP to be able to go forward.
Yeah, this is a special year, 30 years of our Constitution.
Yes.
How do you plan to celebrate it? I want to ask more substantively other questions, but how do you plan on celebrating that moment?
We're looking at the 30 years of the Constitution. We're working on the program. We'll launch it throughout each month, following areas in terms of the Bill of Rights, how we've been. We're going to be involved with law students across universities to be able to, for them to reflect where the issues as competitions for young people have approached NYDA to say, can we get young people that are going to compete and give us the reflection and how the Constitution reflects to them. We will definitely we will release our year plan of celebrating the Constitution, but it will culminate to an conference, international conference this year that talks about access to justice and also the issues of what we want to see. Obviously, other bodies within the portfolio will also have celebratory activities that celebrates the 30th of the Constitution. We're looking forward to this.
You're going to have a very difficult year ahead, and I don't want to not appreciate the extent of that difficulty, because the report of the Matlanga Commission will eventually come out, and in it you will have to pay close attention to some of the allegations and findings that would have been made, and we can preempt at least some of the concerns there, and that is the integrity of judges. We've quite literally seen a judge being arrested, quite literally, on corruption charges. And of course, some of the other allegations are that prosecutors seem to be in cahoots with criminal syndicates, and you've responded to that preemptively here now on lifestyle audits and that such. But programmatically, how do you intend to turn around some of the misfortunes this year that has been raised pertaining to the criminal justice system?
Look, with relation to what the work is being done by various commissions, obviously we're going to receive the report from the Nkabinde inquiry.
Yes.
We'll receive the report from the president. Those are reports that goes to the president. The report for the Matlanga Commission. We're expecting as well the Khampepe Commission. So those are three that we'll have to deal with and report and recommend to the president, and also the implementation of recommendations. Part of the issue, for example, in terms of the work that has to be done from our side, I mean, some of the weaknesses we already deal with, because, as I say, we've established the Office of Ethics and Accountability at NPA. It's already receiving quite a number of work. It's doing quite a fantastic. We want to expand that. The issue of whistleblowers has come in the public. You don't even have to wait for the report to come through from Matlanga Commission to tell you that there's an issue about whistleblowing issues in the country. The legislation has been developed. We are putting it through the system this year to be able to protect. And what is good about that, it gives the responsibility, you'll see when we release it, to the local government, to provincial government, to national, but also to private sector. So it gives everyone. And then it will have an oversight to say, if, Minister, you have received a protected disclosure, you need to have dealt with it by this date. If you have not dealt with it by this date, the person has a right to go and complain against you. So there's those mechanisms. We do think that it will be good for the country. And we've been helped by international experts to show and compare with other countries what they are doing. With regards to the judges, the Chief Justice is responsible for the judiciary, as you know, the separation of powers. And one of the issues that we are doing this year is to fully start implementing the full independence of the judiciary. So from the 1st of April, majority of the shared services that we shared with the judiciary are going there. While I will remain the executive authority.
What does that mean? The Office of the Chief Justice becomes reconfigured?
Yes. We're looking at that. we now starting to transfer a lot of responsibilities into that office of the Chief Justice. But going forward, legislation will come into play, which we will going to take it to Parliament, where it now removes the Minister of Justice as the executive authority of the office of the Chief Justice. That gives the judiciary.
We changed the name too.
They will decide, but the what we are looking at is the model like Parliament. As you look at Parliament, currently they have the Secretary of Parliament, who's the accounting officer, and the speakers, and they are not accountable to the executive. Their budgets, they are running everything, they are responsible for that on their own with the staff. So we're looking at that. But as well, we are cautioning, because in my meeting with the heads of courts, they said they don't want to take contingent liability. They want to make sure that as they take this responsibility, they take it in the manner that it's responsible, but also doesn't collapse the judiciary. And that we would not want to do. So we'll continue to support as the department and as the executive and government until they're fully. So we're looking at that. And also within the judiciary, you'd remember, if there's a complaint about a magistrate, it goes to the Magistrate Commission. It's chaired by the Deputy Judge President in Gauteng. And then the Judicial Commission as well looks at that. There's a tribunal. You've seen many judges in this democracy, we've seen judges being impeached. So where there are complaints, all we are appealing for is that let's do it the right way. Let's lodge process properly, because those are what is missing sometimes. Out of not knowing, we find that people don't lodge these complaints. So you know that there's a judge who's doing wrong thing, there's a magistrate that's doing wrong thing. If you sit with that information on your own, it's not going to help us. But again, we argue that where there is a criminal act, it's not a matter of Judicial Service Commission. It's a matter of the courts. And that's why when they face the courts, then they will be impeached. Because in terms of appointment, there is a condition why they must be fit and proper as judges. I'm
completely out of time. In fact, I'm over time, but I have one more question. The Gampepe inquiry, facing quite a lot of hurdles. What's your response to some of the issues there?
Look, we're looking forward. We are supporting the Gampepe Commission. We do think that is important for us to get to the bottom, especially for the victims. So we did note towards the end of the year, and the Commission, in terms of its terms of reference, will deal with the objections in terms of where people are saying there must be recusal. It's for the Commission to deal with that and determine. Once they are done, then they will submit the report to the President for President to be considered. So we support that commission, and we want to ensure that it happens effectively, the work starts. I understand they are resuming this month together all the commissions, and will be providing. They've asked for additional support in terms of evidence leaders. Those that have left, we've been able to provide that.
Yeah, but I'm sure all while that's happening, you're imploring the NPA to take serious apartheid era crimes.
We continue with that, as you know. There's been reports or requests by the NPA to myself to sign off inquest that needs to be done. We've done quite a number of them, and many of them on the pipeline. So we have several of the cases that are before courts across the country, and others, for example, convictions have been done. So that's the success rate. We're not waiting. Remember, the inquiry there is to check whether at a particular period was there an interference and stopping of prosecutions. But it doesn't say currently with the work that has been done should be stopped. That work continues, and we continue to receive work investigations. It's not an easy area. It's very complex, and NPA has been doing a fantastic job, I must say.
In real terms, the NPA and the judiciary has been underfunded as a function of proportion to GDP. MinCombat's coming up. What are you going to be saying to the Finance Minister to ensure that the NPA has enough money to appoint more prosecutors? There's a capacity issue there. But to also ensure that courts are able to get enough money so that they can digitize and do all the nice things to safeguard the process and integrity of justice.
I can assure you, in the 2025-26 financial year, all the requirements for the judiciary in terms of financial support have been met. We provided them with the requirements at the February. Later, towards the end of the year, there was a review on some of the areas that we were lacking. We were able to augment that utilizing the CARA funding. We've given them that those resources available. So where I'm sitting...
And more money is coming into the CARA fund, it seems. The last quarter was busy.
The last quarter was busy. I'm hoping we get more money. I was asking AFU to say, collect more money, because we do have a lot of requirements. I mean, if you look at the statement from Cabinet, we gave police 1 billion to fight organized crime. We gave military 1 billion. to fight for their infrastructure in digital platforms. And then the remainder we provided for the victims of gender-based violence. This is infrastructure in the courts for testifying and also to Tuzela centers. And then we gave the judiciary so that we can capacitate, but also make sure that the infrastructure that they need is available. So that has been done. So we're looking, I'm hoping I can convene the next meeting. Once the team gives me a heads up that there's more money, we'll convene. We've agreed to meet quarterly to be able to allocate those resources. They are needed. Where there are proceeds of crime, we must bring them back so that they can help us fight crime. So that has been done. On the NPA, I can assure you as well, we've been able to fill the vacancies. You would have seen, I think we've advertised more than 270 vacancies in terms of prosecutors across the country. We've been able to, we've appointed more than 25 now, Section 38, that are specializing to support cases that needs to go to court. The state capture cases under IDEA, quite a number of them, we've been able to appoint and support, and will continue to do that. So I must not put Minister of Finance in the bad light. He's been very supportive in terms of our work. We've had meetings, we have regular meetings in terms of where we balance, we support them. And we have agreed with the minister that we will make sure that the money spent, but also is accountable.
Yeah. And maybe Maumela's Lamborghinis will be liquidated by the time you meet with the Asset Forfeiture Unit to talk about the Kara Fund. Minister, thank you so much for your time. Thank you so much for coming. Really do appreciate it. That is the Minister of Justice and Constitutional Development, Minister Mmamoloko Kubayi.